We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
So hey everybody, welcome to my Sunday show. The Sunday show is where I talk at the camera for 20 minutes and prattle on about things that have been rattling around in my brain over the course of the last week. Starting off with the Sunday show, it's kind of the big news that dropped. Doctor Who has a new doctor. Woohoo! You know, before I talk about the new doctor, I just want to spend a couple of minutes and just say, I can't come to grips with not having Peter Capaldi. I have thoroughly enjoyed him as a doctor, and knowing that this was going to be his last season, I haven't watched this season yet. I'm like in denial. I'm saying to myself, oh, if I just don't watch the shows, and Peter Capaldi can be the doctor for just a little while longer. But it doesn't work that way, really. So what I have to do is just come to grips with the reality that the doctor changes, and that the doctor regenerates, and that we get a new doctor, and that there's value in that. We can talk about that a little bit. So as much as I am excited that we're, turning over a new leaf, we have a new showrunner, new writer, new executive directors, and we have a new doctor, I do want to spend a moment and say I really like Peter Capaldi. Now, Tom Baker's my doctor. He was my first doctor. The doctor will have the #1 slot for my time on this small little rock hurtling around the sun, but Peter comes in a really close second. I really thoroughly have enjoyed what angle and flavor that he brought to the show. It's been a blast and a great ride to go along with him, and like I said, I just have to accept change and watch the series, and then I will. Everything will be okay, and I'll be all square in time for our new doctor. Speaking of things that I haven't watched, I can only assume that our new doctor is going to be amazing, in the sense that I haven't watched Broadchurch. I have not watched Jodie Whittaker as an actor at all. But everything online has said that, she's amazing. So I'm definitely looking forward to our new doctor. And no, I'm not fazed about the doctor being a woman at all. In fact, I'm pretty certain the show telegraphed that the minute the Master came back as Missy. Gender shouldn't, they're Time Lords, for crying out loud, with the power to regenerate. So no, coming back as whatever person the doctor chooses is what they do, and coming back as a woman or a male, or heck, at some point we'll have a doctor who doesn't fit in the binary at all, and that won't come as a surprise either. Here's where I'm not worried or concerned about the doctor being a woman. And actually, this is more like a negative critique of Doctor Who and the series and BBC and how we've worked the Doctor. My question is, why didn't it happen sooner? This is a show that's been around for 6 decades, a show that lives in the land of science fiction, and one of the truths about science fiction is science fiction provides writers and authors and directors the opportunities to present new ideas to us, ideas that are inherently controversial, ideas that go against the grain of society and societal norms, but science fiction is the land where that happens because it's science fiction, so it's not real, right? We can have an interracial kiss on television, but it's not going to shake the foundations of our culture and society because it's on science fiction. It's on Star Trek. We can have women, telling the guys what to do, whether it's a princess or a general, again, because it's science fiction, it's Star Wars. We can have women being the sole survivors of an alien incursion and be really just a badass on the screen, but again, it's science fiction, it's aliens. So the concept of science fiction being the proving grounds for progressive ideas, it's well established going back decades. So really the thing that I would love to be able to know is why did it take so long? Why did it take so long to get a female doctor? Or why do we not yet have a doctor of color? I love Peter Capaldi, and I was super happy when they cast him. But that was an opportunity. That was an opportunity, 4 years ago now, to be able to say we're expanding we're expanding the doctor. We could have done that 2 doctors ago and 3 doctors ago. It's if we're going to get a doctor every 4 years or 3 years, then if it turns out that we chose a bad actor, that's a short-lived mistake. But they don't choose bad actors. They choose great actors. And there are great actors of color out there, and there are great female actors, and there are great trans actors. And if we're gonna, we could have gotten this ball rolling much sooner than now. But that's just me being nitpicky, right? Actually, I don't know if it's me being nitpicky. I think it's a really strong question that we should be asking ourselves, is how come it took so long for one of the longest running, most historically relevant pieces of television, speculative science fiction, why it took so long for them to get there. Star Trek gave us female captains. That didn't end the world, so that could have been a hint that we could have had a female doctor sooner. So that's me just griping a little bit. All I know for sure is with the announcement of the new doctor is I have to sit down and watch Broadchurch now so that I can find out what all of the hype is about, because the internet is saying if we just ignore, oh no, the doctor's a woman for a moment, most folks know are saying that Jodie is an inspired selection. She is a top-notch talent, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what she brings to the doctor, and I don't have any more excuses now for not watching Broadchurch, so I'd better get on that. Yeah. So the other big thing that's been rattling around in my brain over the course of the week is Wonder Woman. It continues to be an amazing story of a film that just keeps bringing in the bucks. Okay, so $750 million at the time of this recording, and really just a few $1 million away from taking 3rd place domestically as far as Warner Brothers releases are concerned, behind Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. So wow, good on Patty Jenkins, good on Warner Brothers, good on Gal Gadot for putting together an amazing movie, a movie I've seen multiple times in the theater now. And if you know me and how much I don't like going into actual movie theaters, then you get a sense about how excited I am and how much I particularly like this movie. I think the thing that I learned this week that had me so surprised was the no man's land scene was a scene that Warner Brothers executives wanted cut from the movie. And what does this do in the movie? It doesn't do anything for the movie, and that just really starts to make me wonder, how is it that these unnamed Warner Brothers executives, maybe there are names attached to them, I didn't read an article that put names. How are those individuals employed? Because that's like a superhero scene. When a superhero goes out and does things for average people, making life better for no other reason or purpose than just because, that makes them a superhero. Not everything that a superhero does has to be about thwarting the big sky beam that threatens to destroy all of the planet. It sometimes is just simply, and honestly, I would love a 2-hour Batman movie where it was just Batman on patrol. Just taking care of a normal night's business. Saving people, in a 2-hour movie, seeing 5 or 6 vignettes where the Batman has to come to grips with evil in its various forms, crime in its various forms, whether it's breaking up a domestic abuse situation or whether it's saving kids from some type of human trafficking, to just setting a junkie straight and maybe getting him into rehab. Just all sorts of different things that the Batman would run into, because not every night is about the Batman like taking down like major villains. It's about doing those things because sometimes the situation is bigger than individual people can handle. So let's take a look at that No Man's Land scene. That scene is where we see Wonder Woman just Wonder Woman. There's no payout except it will allow them to get to their destination sooner, but it's also, you do that to try to make movement happen in the war. You try to do that to try to make the fighting come to a conclusion faster, instead of men just sitting in their trenches taking pot shots at each other. Now, the movie is set near the signing of the armistice, so there was probably no need for that line to move. The idea of Wonder Woman going, making the action move forward, ending the fighting as opposed to just letting a stalemate continue, basically just so that we could save the village. That's a superhero moment. People wanted that cut. I mean, think about that for a second. That iconic image of her with the shield, taking on 3 machine gun nests. How iconic, and how, like, she's coming into her moment as this major hero, and we wanted it removed from the movie. How are these people employed? I could take that job. I got a language arts degree. I've got an English lit degree. I can tell stories. I know good stories from bad stories. Warner Brothers. I'll take that job. I really will, because I'll see that scene in the movie and go, yeah, right? And that's what we all kind of see, is just that yes, go and just kick butt for the name in the name of kicking butt, and leave it in the movie. What I really like about that scene is it would have been super easy. Oh, it would have been so very easy to put into that scene one line that would have just taken the scene and made it into something very cringeworthy. Okay, so Chris Pine's character says to Wonder Woman, "That's no man's land. No one goes in there." And Gal Gadot, she could have turned around and read the line, "I am no man," right? And we'd all just been like, "Oh no!" She doesn't say anything. She just turns around, gets into her battle armor, climbs the ladder, and we go, right? And it was so refreshing to know in the back of your mind that could have happened, but it didn't. Because instead of words, she climbs the ladder and she performs action. And action is, of course, louder than words. So the appreciation of the movie for me is not only just what the movie did and what the movie kept in, but sometimes what the movie and what Patty Jenkins and what the writers left out. What's really funny is last week I was talking about how Star Wars canned Lord and Miller because they were standing up for their vision of how the movie was going to be, and they got canned, and how Patty Jenkins stood up for her vision of the movie and Warner Brothers let her keep it in, and how it's really funny, like you can have directors and how each situation produces different results, even though the action is the same. Standing up for the way that you want the movie to be done, and a movie theater, the movie studio letting that roll, versus standing up for your vision and a movie studio saying "Adios, muchachos." I saw a very interesting thing on the web. It talked about now that Lord and Miller are off of Han Solo, they're free to do the Flash movie, which I guess there was talk that they were going to be directing the Flash movie. What I would love to see with the success of Wonder Woman is I'd like to see like the earlier vision of Justice League and the more revised revision of Justice League, just to see what the difference is between the two and see the Wonder Woman effect, to see how much more screen time Diana gets versus what she got before. All right, Q&A time. Time where I take your questions and answer them in a very curry way. I did a little Facebook cry out for attention. Help me with question and answer. And 3 of you stepped up. 3 of you stepped up and gave me fodder to play with. One question, which is incredibly hard for me to answer. And then when I actually did a little bit of research in order to answer it, was like, oh no, this is happening. This is happening already. So my answer isn't even my answer anymore. But let's go ahead and get to it. Question number 1 comes from Devin. This is the question that was the hardest one to answer. And it's also the one that when I answered it, realized, it's already a thing, so it's not even really a legitimate answer, but I'm going to run with it anyway. So Devin asks, if you were in charge of the next superhero movie, what would you pick? What would their superpowers be? And now the answer for me was really easy. I thought about it for a little while. Partly, I originally was going to run with, I didn't want a superhero movie, I wanted a supervillain movie. Kind of like the novel Grendel, where we see the story from the other side, from the target of the hero, if you will. I wanted a good movie. I wanted a really good movie on Mr. Freeze. I wanted the Heart of Ice episode from Batman the Animated Series, and I wanted it expanded into a 2-hour movie because Batman the Animated Series, again, is one of, and I've said this before on numerous occasions, one of the best pieces of American television and American animation that's ever been made. One of the things that the TV show did was it expanded on the canon of the comic books. Victor Freeze has always just kind of been a gimmicky scientist. Batman the Animated Series gave Victor Freeze one of the most heartbreaking backstories of the Rogues Gallery, a scientist trying to save his dying wife, and it's all for that, and it's just like, oh, tear my heart out. Animated series, please, why don't you? I only have one of them here. Why don't you take it? Dunk, 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 dunk. So they kind of touch on that in the very, very bad Batman and Robin movie. It's a shame because he is such a sympathetic villain. And if we could get a really good, Victor Freeze movie, where it ends with Batman coming in and apprehending him, then I think we would get a really good movie. But that's not really a superhero movie, so I put that on the shelf. And I went back and I said, who do I know of who would be really cool to have today be a remake sort of thing? And I flashed back to a movie I watched when I was a kid, the 1975 movie of the 1933 superhero Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. I loved that movie as a kid, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I did a little bit of research on it just to kind of brush up on who Doc Savage was. I only read a couple of Doc Savage magazines, so I just kind of wanted to say, oh, I'm going to talk about Doc Savage and how he's awesome, because Doc Savage was from birth trained by his father and other scientists to be the finest human specimen, physically and intellectually. So, like, imagine the body and physique of Captain America, but without the super sauce, with, I guess, the intellect of Bruce Wayne. He's supposed to be the best at everything, the smartest, but also the strongest, and, like, his senses have been tuned so that he could, like, smell the perfume of a woman, like, a half a mile away, or things like that. So Doc Savage is, like, the pinnacle of human existence. Now, he has this team, sometimes they're called the Fabulous Five, and he has this team of people who help him, like, solve crimes. Like, he's got a lawyer and an engineer and I think a chemist or a physicist or whatever. And they go around and they solve crime. And this was set in the 1930s. So what's really cool is like all of the fantastic future technology of his era is, you know, like stuff that we look back and go, you know, some of that stuff we look back and go, well, we had that 30 years ago. And some of the technology is like, oh my goodness, we're just now mass marketing the kind of technology that he pioneered, if you will, in the 1930s. And so, but here's the thing, here's the reason, Devin, why my answer still isn't super legitimate. Where was I on my birthday last year, May 31st, 2016, when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson signed on to be Doc Savage? Shane Black is like headlining the screenwriting for a script for a, as far as comingsoon.net says, release date yet to be announced, Doc Savage movie. I don't know where I was, but apparently I wasn't watching the internet on my birthday, because that would have caught my radar and I would have just been like, what? I would have said that way, not because I was like blown away, but like, Dwayne Johnson is Doc Savage. No. And the Hollywood Reporter article talks about the movie, how it'll be a comedy, and oh, he's so smart and great at everything, but he's awkward in social situations. And it's like, I think the man who's been trained to be perfect at everything would be perfect at social situations as well. I don't buy the fish out of water routine for Doc Savage. He was in the movie, he was the ultimate Boy Scout, but he wasn't like unable to understand basic human interaction. He fought against criminals, so that's what he does. So like Doc Savage, I haven't seen anything talking about if the screenplay will be set in the 30s or if the screenplay is set today. But maybe it would make more sense for Doc Savage to be set in the 1930s. I mean, it worked for, you know, it worked for setting Wonder Woman in World War I. It worked for Captain America 1 to set it in World War II. I think audiences are primed for the idea of superheroes in other time periods. So maybe, but in a certain extent, are we treading in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen territory? I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm saying maybe I don't want a Doc Savage movie. But it's on the way, it's happening, so I guess we'll see how well that works. So anyway, if I were given the opportunity, let's assume that I live in a different alternate universe where this hasn't happened, I would have totally run with Doc Savage, and I would have made him, you know, the perfect specimen. You know, what kind of movie would it have been? I don't know. I don't mind a serious movie, and I don't mind a thriller, which is why I'm kind of excited that the new Batman movie is going to be film noir-ish and more of a detective story. I think that's what we need, is a movie that showcases... We have to remember that Batman is a detective. We need a movie that showcases that. So Doc Savage is an intellectual but also a physical specimen. So we need a movie that would accentuate that as well. So I don't know, maybe Doc Savage goes and takes it to the North Korean government, and we can unify the Korean Peninsula and end the Korean War. Maybe Doc Savage ends the Korean War. Maybe Doc Savage stitches that giant ice sheet iceberg back onto the Antarctica shelf. I don't know. Maybe. My next question comes from Desiree. Desiree asks, what are your plans for the next 10 years? Whew, that's a big question. I don't see myself leaving my job. I am 15 years into my career, and I don't see myself leaving my building for the next 10 years. My family has been a part of our high school since my older sister entered the doors in 1984. I don't see myself leaving as far as employment and such are concerned. The 10 years from now, both my children will have left the home. One wrapping up college, one in college. And I'm going to, 10 years from now, I'm going to be 53. Ugh. I think the only thing I won't be doing that I am doing now is I started Nerfing at 40, and I said I was going to give it 10 years. And then see how I feel at 50. So one of the big changes might be whether or not I'm Nerfing. Another big change might be, I don't see myself leaving my home either. We're working on just every month trying to tackle a little project, making the home a little less, unhappy and a little bit healthier. And we have some big remodel plans and some big backyard projects that are underway. And so it's really kind of funny is that I feel like I'm in cruise control, and that 10 years from now still feels like it's inside cruise control. So my boring life now will be my boring life then. I'll tell you certain things I hope don't happen. I hope I don't need major medical changes in my life. And I hope that 10 years from now I don't have any more scars on me. I've only had surgery once. It was for a ruptured disc in my back, and I'd like to keep it that way for a while. Yeah, so there are a lot of things I hope don't happen over the course of the next 10 years. There are things I'm definitely looking forward to in the next 10 years. The official spawn of Curry, the eldest spawn of Curry, I am very excited. He's looking at a potential career choice where he'll be working with special needs students, and he's articulating that now, and I think that's a really noble path for him to walk down, and I'll be interested to see if he sticks to that path. 10 years from now, the second official spawn of Curry, I just think he's going to be a bona fide rock star. His guitar work is coming along swimmingly, and his drum work is coming along swimmingly, and I'm super excited to see where he goes with his music, and heaven help us if he decides he wants to focus more on the violin too. I mean, this kid hasn't met an instrument that he doesn't like. So, simple boring life, simple boring answer, even 10 years down the road. But thanks for the question. I had fun thinking about it. Anna asks, what's my favorite conspiracy theory? I love that question. That's an easy question for me to answer. I have always been a big fan of the ancient, I don't know if you can call it conspiracy theory, I'm going to call it conspiracy theory. The ancient alien hypothesis, the idea that aliens visited the Earth in the past and that they are either directly or indirectly responsible with the human form itself and the development of our culture, or that they are, to a certain extent, responsible for certain construction and maybe even responsible for the very faiths that make up both past but also present cultures. And who doesn't love, I gotta look at his name so that I can say it right. Who doesn't love Giorgio Tsoukalos? I mean, the hair, right? Right? Amazing hair. I love the guy. I love the whole cast of characters in that ancient aliens universe. It's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. I've always, so as far as me and life in the universe, I agree with the general hypothesis that it's just impossible with the billions of planets inside additional billions of galaxies. The idea that life as we know it only happened on this planet, that's a level of just hubris that I can't subscribe to. There has to be life elsewhere. That just has to be. Mathematically, it doesn't ring true for me. And so the question is there life that can either travel the vastness of space or through the intricacies of time to be able to come here and interact with people? So whether it's time travelers from a future Earth coming back, or whether it's, truly alien races that are crossing the cosmos, if the number of planets that have life are so small compared to the number of planets that don't, then I think that any sentient race that has a desire to become spacefaring would actively seek out other life and connect with it. And I would like to think that that's happened for us. But I also know that any sentient race would look at us and say, they're still in the larval stage. They haven't gotten certain fundamental things of life figured out yet. We probably should hold off for a little while, lest the stank of humanity spread amongst the stars. But I've always enjoyed the Ancient Alien programs. I've always been amazed at how much history is in those shows. If you take away the 15 minutes of Alien that make up the framework of the show's a good 30 minutes of real archaeology and real history and real journeying around the globe to see the past from different cultures. And sometimes I find that there's more history on the Ancient Alien shows than in a lot of shows that are on the History Channel. I've always found that funny. But so my favorite conspiracy theory is the Ancient Alien, Ancient Mariner coming to the planet, sky people, gods, or whatever you want to call it, and that early man described them using their only framework that they had, which was, these are beings from the stars, these are gods, these are deities, and they are flying as opposed to riding in a craft, and they cast fire and lightning bolts as opposed to just firing lasers. If aliens did come today, I mean, it would look, if we talked about aliens today, if they came, it would look more like War of the Worlds. It would look more like Arrival, depending on whether or not the aliens came were, beneficial or not beneficial or whatever. It would look more like that because we understand technology better now than we did 8,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago. Do I believe everything that I see in the Ancient Aliens, like, canon of TV shows and such? No. Aliens and dinosaurs? No. Aliens and, why my milk turned sour in the refrigerator? No. But the concept of, did somebody break the Prime Directive 10,000 years ago? Yes, probably. It probably was Kirk too, because the man was a menace. He was absolutely a menace. Anyway. So that's my favorite conspiracy theory. Good question, thanks. Alright, time for the final segment of the Sunday show. And this is called Follow a Hashtag. It's a thing that trends on Twitter. If you don't know about it, I suggest you go check it out. And this week, the hashtag trend that I think you should check out is the hashtag Ask Eddie on Twitter. So, Southern Rail, which is in the United Kingdom and much hated by its local populace, put a 15-year-old student on responding to their Twitter feed as a part of his 2-week work experience for the summer. And it has met with amazing results. People are actually, like, this might be the best move that Southern Rail has ever done, according to various UK news outlets. So basically Eddie said, hey, I'm here to answer your questions. And all of a sudden Eddie got all sorts of questions like, why do men in the United Kingdom wear socks and sandals when they vacation? And Eddie says, oh, I think you'd love my father, because apparently Eddie's father wears socks and sandals while out on holiday. Eddie has been asked questions that are fun, ridiculous, downright rude, and so Neil and Amy have had to come to his rescue from time to time. But when Neil and Amy are answering questions on the Southern Rail Twitter feed, there's outrage. What have you done with Eddie? We demand Eddie back. And I feel bad for Amy, because Amy kept having to say, look, he'll be back at noon. When is it noon? Noon is not now. He'll be back at noon. And so Eddie is 15 years old and has demonstrated what I think is true about a lot of things on the internet and in technology as a whole, is that sometimes the right people to solve a problem that's centered around technology are the youngest people. If you had had 15 software developers and engineers sit down and put together a national health exchange, and they were all ages 17 to 22, you would have had something rolled out that worked in a matter of weeks, as opposed to the various different debacles that rolled out across the country when the ACA went into effect. Oregon's not, is definitely a part of that group. But if you had just put a bunch of 19-year-olds in a room and said, look, we want to be able to do this and this and this, they'd have punched out a website in a few hours for just nachos and Mountain Dew, probably, as payment, and you would have had something that worked very, very well. And I think the Southern Rail Twitter feed being handed to a very level-headed and mature 15-year-old, but somebody who is aware that on Twitter you're there to have fun, and you can't, I guess you can't take it too terribly seriously. I mean, he answered very good questions that were concerning, like, when do I have to renew my rail ticket, or will my rail ticket be eaten by the machine if I finish this route? And he was able to answer those questions. So one of the questions that was asked was from basically Scotland Rail, where Scotland Rail said, if you want a job in Scotland, we'll give you one, but you have to like biscuits. What type of biscuit do you like? And he replies with McVitie's digestives. I didn't know what those were, so I had to look them up and then remember that biscuits means something different there than it does here. But kudos to young Eddie for helping a much hated rail company get some internet love, help set up a very interesting hashtag on fire, and bring some enjoyment and levity to the world of Twitter. So good on Eddie, and it's not slowing down. I understand it. He might be back. I think he's closing up his 2-week experience. But if you want a good read, you want to see some fun tweets and some good playful banter back and forth between people who generally hate Southern Rail and a young man who is turning around the hearts and minds of people everywhere, then might I suggest the hashtag AskEddie on Twitter. Hey everybody, that's the Sunday Show. Thanks for watching. I hope you had a good time. Remember that the Sunday Show rolls around early every Monday morning, because I don't get to this until late Sunday night, but hey, it was Sunday when I started, so it counts, right? This week there's a Nerf video, I promise, and episode 3, installment 3 of my Nuka World Red Rocket Minuteman Outpost build. Coming along wonderfully. There's a barn in your future if you want to see that. And the Nerf video is going to be a build video as well. I've never made this particular type of classic modified Nerf blaster, but I will, and cut it up into bite-sized chunks and put it up on the web on Wednesday, so make certain that you check that out. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, in the comments below, write a question that you want me to answer next week on the Q&A section of the program. I'm finding that's the most fun that I'm having with the video, so help a guy out. Throw me some questions. I want to be able to answer them. And then learn something new, like Dwayne Johnson is going to be Doc Savage. Who knew? Alright, as always, may Yoda rise your X-Wing up to meet you. May the dark side be forever at your back. May your saber shine warm upon your face. The Imperial Walkers fall soft upon your battlefields, and until we meet again, may the Force be with you always.